Morning. It's Friday. Tomorrow is Saturday. And then next week I'm on holiday. So no morning practice, no daily practice next week from me. But the videos are all there on the YouTube channel for anybody who wants to catch up. There's a lot of variety, and I haven't yet gone back and edited the descriptions to explain what's in each of the videos. So it's a bit of a kind of potluck at the moment, bit of a lucky dip if you want to go and just try any of the YouTube videos. But this week in general I've been doing a little bit more explicitly sort of mental health movement practices. They're always related. Any movement practice can be a mental health practice. They're, the mind and the brain and the body and movement all goes together, all the same facets of the same thing. So, but yeah, this week has been a little bit more explicitly mental health focused. If you're new and you're just joining for the first time, really just take it very, very much at your own pace. I think today is going to be a less beginner-friendly practice. So you can, my invitation always is really to work from a position of your own comfort. Beyond everything, your own comfort is your priority. Just as in this daily practice, which is my daily practice, my own comfort is my priority. So I'm not teaching a class on Zoom. If you want a class on Zoom, I do that. You can get in touch with me. But in this, I can't see you. I don't know who you are necessarily, or what's going on with your body, or your state of being right now, what your level of experience is, and so on. So more than ever, it's important that we just do this practice really from a place of what feels good. That's the main priority. So I would say if you want a really gentle practice, maybe go back and explore some of the Monday through Thursday sessions from this week, which will be more of an introduction into the mindfulness, the stillness, the breathing, the releasing, the getting to know your own body. Today, that's always my baseline. I'm always starting from that. But I want to flow a bit more, and I'm going to work a little bit harder. So that's where I'm at today. This is my last Friday before a week off, so I need to push it a bit. So, having said that, I'll probably just lie down and have a nap on live stream for an hour. You never know, because it's improvised. And this is our for self-care. So if I change my mind as I go through, that's my right to do that. I'm going to just lie down to start with. Oh, I want to have a little stretch. I don't know what I did to get my legs so tight earlier. My TFL and my quads are so super tight from 2 days ago, but I don't know what I did. I really wasn't doing very much this week, to be honest, in terms of my own training. So I'm lying down, my legs long. At the moment that's comfortable for me, so that's okay. Just keep my legs long, and I bring my arms down by the side of my body because that's also okay for me. So I'm basically in this kind of stick figure position. Long arms and legs, a torso, a head. I just want to check in with those lines of myself, and I use the orientation of those lines of myself in space. The line from my head to the base of my pelvis. The line from one hip to one foot. The line from the other hip to the other foot. The line from one shoulder to one hand. The line from the other shoulder to the other hand. All those things, all those lines give me an idea of my own alignment in a very basic sense. That's a really important sense of self. And I'm thinking about those lines of myself. The line is the length and the direction. But I also, of course, have a feeling of my own mass maybe something to do with like the texture of the flesh. So I want to notice for myself any qualities that they're not kind of functional, anatomical, they're not scientific, but they're just qualities. What's the quality of each piece of my body, each major chunk of my body? So from my left side of the pelvis and my left hip to my left foot, for me, I sense it's quite thick and kind of chunky. I feel a little thickening behind the back of the left knee. And I also feel very aware, for me, I have a sense that the line of the left leg actually goes all the way up through the left side of the pelvis, the left side of the belly, the left side of the ribs, up to my left shoulder. So for me, I feel a really clear connection from the left foot in a line all the way up to the left shoulder. I don't feel that on the right side at all. If I think about my right side, I feel a little bit kind of weedier. The line, it feels sort of thinner and smaller. And the line of from my right foot to my right hip, let me just close my eyes again to sense it. Goes, up to my right hip, and then sort of there's more of a turn, a corner. I still do feel a connection up to my right side of the chest actually, which is interesting, but it's just a much shorter, kind of denser line. I feel like the mass of myself on my right hand side is smaller, shorter, denser. And then I just see, what about shoulder to arm on each side? Well, again, I feel I have a sort of fuller left arm and a slightly scrawnier right arm. And then the length of the torso, harder for me to sense. What I can sense is that I'm resting quite well on the ground. For me at least, I'm certainly not in a neutral alignment of the spine, but I'm definitely resting reasonably well. Did I turn the microphone on? Oh gosh, it's like, did I leave the oven on? Yeah, I did. I did turn the microphone on. Did not leave the oven on. That's good. I've done these like very, very subtle practices before. There was one day, like I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, where I was really like emotionally devastated because I did like half an hour of really fine, subtle work, almost invisible visually. So it was all about, anybody watching would have really needed the audio guide of my voice to understand what was going on. And half an hour in, I realised I didn't have the microphone turned on. I was so distraught. Obviously that happened like in a week where I was already feeling really dark and down about things. So I've noticed whatever I can notice about myself, about my body in relation to gravity, the parts of my body in relation to each other. I don't feel that I can't sense anywhere where I'm really holding particularly. I know that there is chronic tension in my body. I know that I am holding because I know that just dictates my alignment and my shape, and my alignment certainly isn't, let's call it, neutral. So I know that there is unnecessary effort going on. But at the moment, all of the, I think at least anything in my conscious control I've released. So I don't feel like I'm really gripping anywhere in particular. I feel soft around the eyes, I feel soft in the jaw. I feel soft around the chest, the upper back, the arms. There's a little sort of, yeah, that's true, there's a little kind of tightening in the back of my diaphragm, the back of my waistline, back of my ribs. And a corresponding tightness in the front of my hips, which is basically always there. But it doesn't feel bad today, it feels pretty good. Soft belly. I'm just going to lay my hands on my low belly and let myself just breathe. So in this position, because I do have that's an understatement, because I do have a bit of tightness in my hips and my mid-back, I'm a bit arched in this position in my lower back, so it's a bit difficult for me to soften my belly, to release my belly. I can feel that as I breathe, I'm breathing into my upper belly and low ribs. So I'm just going to bend my knees and stand my feet. Let my spine, my back, my flesh of my torso settle into the ground a little bit. And then in this position, my back can soften a bit more, my hips can soften a bit more. And now I can start to just send the breath a little bit deeper down into the belly. That's nice. Maybe I'll just have a nap now for the next half an hour. So this belly breathing is very softening. I'm going to roll and just kneel. So for me, I'm comfortable kneeling. Anybody who's not comfortable kneeling, you could do the same thing sitting on a chair. But the benefit of kneeling is that I can place my hand under my pelvic floor. You can see the sunshine coming from between my legs. So I'm going to place my one hand there under my pelvic floor, really right under all of the musculature that contains me there. And I'm just breathing. So I want to feel changing hands. I want to feel that my pelvic floor moves. That's all I want to feel. And I don't need to do anything, it just moves. So I'm working a little bit to start with today. I made whole video for Instagram about the diaphragms, pelvic diaphragm, respiratory diaphragm, and I can't upload it. It's just giving me a nightmare. Maybe I'll put something on Instagram about the diaphragms and about breathing. So of course this Mental Health Week series, breathing is so important, and I'm just going to rest. Can I do the same thing here? Probably. So I can do the same thing sitting here, as long as I'm comfortable and I'm kind of fairly even on either side of my pelvis. I just want to breathe. And for anybody who's not familiar with this, it can be really hard to sense. But basically, without our needing to worry about it, unless there's some damage, even then it will only be a matter of degrees. Generally, when you inhale, your respiratory diaphragm moves down. So I'm going to have my hands here in front of my chest to help me sense, just to help me visualize and therefore sense what's going on with my respiratory diaphragm as I breathe. So I inhale and I push my palms down to flatten my hands here. And then I exhale and I lift the hands up into this dome shape. Inhale. Hands flatten, illustrating what's happening with the diaphragm. Exhale. Diaphragm softens back up into its dome. The inhalation pushes the diaphragm down. Difficult to do whilst talking. The inhalation pushes the diaphragm down to make space for the lungs to fill up with air. I'll say that again. The inhalation pushes the diaphragm down to make space for the lungs to fill up with air. The lungs fill up with air, pushing the diaphragm down. Exhaling, the air goes out of the lungs and the diaphragm can lift back up into its dome shape. So, what happens at the same time, this is easier sitting on a chair, by the way, if anybody wants to work on it in another moment. What happens then, where with the pelvic floor, better to call it a pelvic diaphragm, it's this kind of hammock of muscles. The respiratory diaphragm goes this way, the pelvic floor goes this way. I'm talking through just a breathing practice I would do for myself. So now hand right underneath the pelvic floor. Actually, I'm going to keep my thumb with my fingers, that's a little easier. And I just want to notice that I can keep miming with the top hand as well. As I inhale, my lungs push my respiratory diaphragm down, or my respiratory diaphragm moves down, pulling my lungs to draw air in. And that pushes down the contents of my belly. And that presses down on the pelvic floor or the pelvic diaphragm. So I can feel that as I inhale, the space is made as my pelvic floor moves down towards the ground, opens down towards the ground. And as I exhale, my magic pelvic floor just draws back up again to support the viscera, the contents of the pelvis. I could increase it a bit. I could exaggerate what's already happening. It's a very basic, slightly reductionist, but functional description of what things are doing. And then I just lie down and rest again. This is different. If I'm in a different relationship to gravity, the experience will be different. But actually, worth doing here as well, because very subtly, without the weight of everything, so obviously if I'm vertical in gravity, all of the weight is pushing down onto the pelvic floor is keeping everything up inside me. Here the pelvic floor doesn't have to do that, the pelvic floor isn't bearing all of the weight of my innards in relation to gravity, but it's still moving to accommodate my breath, it's still moving to accommodate my insides, so I'm just going to try and sense that. As I inhale, without me trying to do anything, that's really important. I'm not trying to do it. I'm not trying to manipulate anything. I'm just feeling what already exists. When I inhale, my pelvic floor moves down a little bit towards my knees and feet. And when I exhale, it just comes back. Now I know I have the difference in the musculature of my pelvic floor on my left and right sides. Probably not that unusual, to be honest. Everybody is asymmetrical. But I just do a few more breaths and I just let my awareness, I want to just make sure, I didn't say this at the beginning, so I'm just inviting a kind of switching into this very soft focus awareness. I've done this kind of very specific, kind of analytical beginning. And I just want to switch into being able to notice very specific things. Sensing my pelvic floor, for example. Challenging. Pelvic floor includes the sphincters of the genital area. Regardless of gender. Sorry, that's the wrong word, right? Regardless of sex. So I can notice very specifically something where I'm intentionally training my attention on that area. But I'm also practicing this kind of soft focus, almost like peripheral vision, awareness that just expands out and attention that drifts around my body so I can pick up on different things. I can pick up on whether something makes me feel anxious and I just want to stop doing it. I can pick up on whether something feels really comfortable and pleasurable and I want to continue. I can pick up on whether I want to change my alignment on the floor to make myself more comfortable. I can pick up on the fact that I might want to change the position of one leg because I realise I could be softer in my right hip if I just let my right foot and knee rest in a different place. I can sense my alignment in the rest of my body and notice changes, notice contact against the ground. I can pick up on if I start to hold my breath, or if I start to tense my fingers or toes, or squeeze my jaw, tense around my eyes. All of those things, just as my attention drifts around my body, a sort of expansive field of awareness to take in my whole self, at the same time as being able to focus on something very specific. Whether those things really happen or not at the same time is a different neurological conversation, but anyway, that's my experience of it. I'm going to roll to my side. I've had enough of that. I want to get moving. I did a practice earlier. I want to just do some very different types of movement, just to really show some different movement qualities and do different things that are really pleasurable. So to start with, I'm just lying down and I'm just rolling, and there is no right or wrong way. There is just nothing, anything goes. And we're all alone in our own homes, or rather alone or with somebody in our own homes, wherever you are. You're not broadcasting live on YouTube while you do this. So you can do whatever you want and you don't have to feel self-conscious. You can roll, whatever, anything, just rolling. Rolling, rolling, rolling in different ways. So I just want to kind of get movement going, movement through space. And for me, this is a really nice time to just remember to point out, I'm on a carpet with a blanket on top. It's soft, it's so nice, I like rolling on it. So that might be a really different experience if somebody's on a hard floor with just a thin yoga mat on top. So what you do is, of course, also responsive to your environment. For me, it feels nice to roll on a blanket. And when I'm rolling, really what I'm doing is just enjoying my contact with the floor. So on my belly, for example, I can just really spread out and I can roll my arms. I'm just exploring different ways of making contact with the floor, rolling and sliding. And I want to just squidge different parts of myself against the ground. For me, I've got these really tight thighs right now. Tight IT band, tensor fascia lata, down the side of my thigh. And I want to roll that into the ground a little bit, like as if I was using a foam roller, but I don't need a foam roller, just roll on the ground. Over these big chunky leg muscles and fascia, rolling out fascia. Blech. I'm rolling around, I just do whatever I want. And the more I think what I want to do is just be clear that there are different ways, maybe for now just exploring 2 different ways. So one way is to explore the contact of the floor in a kind of wriggly, rolly way. I'm lifting things up away from the floor and I'm exploring the contact of the floor by pushing into the ground and feeling how pushing down somewhere, for example in my feet, sends another part of my body up. Boom. And I can reach up, so if I reach my feet up into the air further, then my pelvis lifts. If I reach my hands up into the air further, then my head lifts. Whatever feels good. But pushing into the ground, contact with the ground is what enables coming into and away from the floor. Whee. One thing goes down, another thing goes up. My knees push down, my head goes up. My feet push down, my head goes up. My hands push down, my feet go up. Boom. So I'm not pushing into anything that feels extreme for me because I haven't done lots of mobilizing. So all of this is a way of mobilizing at the same time. So I'm staying soft, staying aware of my own alignment, my own body. Not because I'm not saying alignment like, oh my God, I have to get something correct. I'm just saying awareness, not to do anything extreme at this stage. Just to push into the ground so that something pushing down means something else goes up. This is quite a kind of, at this speed that I'm going, it's warming me up and it's kind of enlivening. So plenty of people know, plenty of people are aware that, for example, like maybe doing a HIIT class is also a mental health practice. You just want to move your body, maybe sweat a bit, feel good, move, get out of kind of damaging thought patterns and just have a physical experience. But also, I'm going a little bit more sophisticated than that because I'm just focusing on my contact with the floor. Floor, 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 floor. Feet softening into the floor, hands softening into the floor. Head, maybe. Contact of the head with the ground. So, whatever I do, I'm doing it to sense my base of support, and that's what I'm getting at. What supports me? What supports me? Different positions. What supports me? And I'm going to rest. So this idea of the base of support is really important. I did lots of stuff yesterday about the sitting bones. Sensing the sitting bones is a nice calming, grounding practice. But using the support of the ground, knowing that everything has an equal and opposite force, means that I can just give up effort so much. Like, if I push into the ground, something else goes up. I don't have to work really, really, really hard to lift myself in relation to gravity, Because actually I'm going down in relation to gravity. I'm falling down in towards the ground all the time, but it's that very action of falling down, of pressing down, of going down into the ground that enables me to also go up. Because everything that goes down into the ground has an equal and opposite force coming up from the ground. Otherwise the ground would just tumble away underneath us like some kind of hectic video game, VR experience of the world crumbling underneath your feet or something. That's not happening, thankfully, so I know the ground is stable, supports me. If I push down into it, there's an equal and opposite force that pushes me up away from it. Aha! Playing with equal and opposite force. So here's me just walking a little bit more of that. I'm going to slow down and just feel the same thing. Here's a really important concept for squats. Boom. Toddlers are good at it. It's an important concept for everything. What if I do sit-ups, curl-ups? But rather than thinking up, let me do some thinking. I'm just going to do some curl-ups and think up. Up, up, up. Ooh, feel my hips tight of the effort. See if it's different. If I just think of pushing what goes down into the ground more. So if I lift just my head, it's my shoulders push down, shoulders push down, shoulders push down, shoulders push down. If I want to lift my head and shoulders, then my upper mid-back has to start pressing into the ground. Shoulders back, shoulders then back, shoulders then back, shoulders then back. Yeah, nice. Shoulders then back. Down to go up, down to go up, down to go up. Hooray! Good. So just resting, noticing my contact with the ground. Noticing the stick figure of my body. Wow, my left side has changed a lot. That's a surprise to me. So that's why these check-ins are good. Just coming back to the position I was lying in originally. My sense of my own body's really changed. I feel like my right side's kind of chunkier than it was, and also more in line. And now my left side is a little lighter and slimmer. That's fun. I'm going to switch into a very different kind of contact with the ground. So rather than thinking down to go up, to understand my base of support, to understand force, I'm just softening. So for me, this is really pleasurable to do lying on the belly. This is kind of where I started from today before I had managed to articulate what I was doing. So I'm just going to go more into it now that I've articulated the contrast with what I was doing before, where I was playing with contact with the ground, to play with force, to play with base of support, to play with down to go up. Now I'm just softening into the ground, still exploring contact with the floor, but more inviting myself to melt into the ground. So for me, it's nice to start lying on the belly. I'm back into this thing I was saying at the beginning, that I want a blanket on a floor, so it's just soft. And I'm going to just play with kind of stroking the back of my hand against the ground, stroking the palm. I just want to feel everything melting. Everything I do just melts me into the ground a little bit more. So here is a very sensual practice, an alternative. I think basically today's daily practice is like me kind of recapping for myself and giving a reminder to people who watch that without a teacher, here are all these things you can do just to engage with your own body without worrying about what's right or wrong, as long as you're listening to your own body. So touch. I did a whole series on touch. some point in the past, and workshops on touch, self-touch as well. So self-touch is maybe a nice thing while I'm exploring my contact with the floor in this very soft, rolling, softening, melting, sensual way. I'm feeling, this is more about like skin. I feel the contact of the skin. I'm just starting to softly roll and wriggle. I guess it's writhing a little bit. I want to feel lazy and heavy, so that every way that I move myself, I get different pressure into the ground, different melting into the ground. So probably see my spine moving. What if I think about trying to get the top of my chest? This is really amazing to get some pressure through here. So I think of like, how can I squidge my own chest into the ground, and it really pushes air out of the lungs. And I just feel all my squidgy ribs squidging. I feel my squidgy belly squidging. I feel my squidgy face squidging. Get bonus points for dribbling. I'm rolling and I'm heavy. And as I roll onto my side, I want to feel the underside of my ribs against the ground. And there's just writhing and rolling and feeling contact and letting the breath settle. Oh, just heavy and luxurious. Now the sun's come out. And I reach and roll. So as I roll onto my other side, I feel the underside of my ribs expanding into the ground. As I roll onto my belly melts into the ground. As I roll onto my back, I play with getting different parts of the back of my body into the ground. So movement of the pelvis, the feet, the knees, the head, the breastbone, the arms, everything affects everything else. I'm just trying to release and roll and be squidgy and sensual. My jaw is soft, my eyes are soft. I'm just going to do that for another moment or two, a few moments, just without talking, just experiencing squidging into the ground, and always aware of my rhythm. So just aware of whether I'm doing a rhythm that feels good and I want to continue, or whether I feel I'm getting stuck in a rhythm and actually it's not helping me and I want to just allow myself a chance to pause or go a little faster, slow down more. So rhythm has a big effect on my experience, and that's just something I can play with and be aware of as I'm melting into the ground. This is kind of an exploration. It can develop, at least if I shift my attention, this can develop into an exploration of how different parts of me are connected. What affects what? As I roll, my leg goes one way, that pulls my pelvis, it moves my belly and my back, my ribs roll on the ground, my head is rolled passively without me having to use any muscles in my neck. My head just rolls. So playing with how things connect. If I move my arm in one direction or my leg in the other direction, there are these lines of force, these chains, these connections through the body. Always having to navigate space, of course. And rotation can be a nice way, so just to be a bit more explicit about what I'm doing. If I take one leg a lot across the body down towards the ground and I keep that leg long, I feel that leg can roll me all the way onto my belly if I want, but then the same side arm reaching the opposite way could roll me back onto my back. So I just feel there's this really obvious chain of connection through my center. I don't want to really go, I want to go exploring that chain of connection. I've taught lots of people, and I've really seen it as well in dances a lot, where it's sort of like artificially enforcing it, like miming, pretending that you can feel the connection, and it's just not going to do anything for you. So if you don't feel it, it's fine. You just have to play with it. Well, maybe I just want to take my knee over, and actually I just feel that my knee moves my shoulder. Well, that's good. My knee moves my shoulder. Well, actually that means my knee moves my pelvis, moves the whole chain of the spine, moves my ribs, moves my shoulder. So then I can play more with that. So that's just thinking, exploring how different parts of the body connect. And I'm just going to rest again. Arms long, legs long, coming back to my scanning position from the beginning. Releasing. In a lovely way now. I feel very calm with my contact against the ground. Much more aligned. I feel I'm more of a stick figure than I was before. Before I was kind of spread out more like a snow angel. Legs wide and arms wide. Whereas now I feel it's a little bit easier for me to have my legs a little bit more underneath me, in line with my pelvis. My hands a little bit more down by my side. I haven't done that on purpose, it's just happened. Now that that's settled, I can feel more clearly the difference in the musculature of my left and right sides of my face. So it's amazing how different things pop up in one's attention. If, for example, one is experiencing pain, that can really just dominate, and then you can't experience anything else. So it's like, well, how do you shift away from that to experience other things? That's a bigger thing, a conversation about the brain and the nervous system and chronic pain. Anyway, not for now. I bend my knees and I stand my feet. Interesting how I say conversation when it's just me in my room talking to myself, right? Oh dear. Mental health. So I've got my knees bent, my feet standing. I feel so nice. My contact against the ground is just great now. I feel just like so spread out and easy and happy. This could be a nice place to finish the practice. But I'm going to do a bit more. I'm going to revisit something I was doing earlier in the week, which was about boundaries. Boundaries in terms of range of movement. What is good? What is just enough? What is too far? In a kind of anatomical textbook, I could talk about very specific ranges of movement, like the number of degrees of rotation at each vertebra or in different parts of the spine, or you can get very kind of analytical about it. But everybody's actually different. I'm not talking about the anatomically optimal range of movement. I'm talking about what feels okay and learning about where one's own boundaries are. Where does it feel good? Where are you getting up to the place where it feels like it's a bit too much? Could you go a little further? Do you need to come back? This thing of like looking after yourself, and I'm talking about that in a body way. It's a metaphor, right? But it's physical. So it's also in the body. So I'm just going to have a very soft play with range of movement in a very non-anatomical specific way, just an experiential way. So I'm going to start with my right hand. Apparently I've just started. That's what I did last time as well, I remember. Exploring where my fingers go. That's it. That's what I'm exploring. Where do my fingers go in relation to each other, in relation to the hand? I did a whole practice on this earlier in the week, so I'm just going to rush through it much faster now. But I notice what I notice. I notice, for example, that I got some stiffness around my first two knuckles. I don't want to push into it. I already did push into it a little bit as I was talking, so I just come out of it and softer. I want to leave my hand completely relaxed and explore the movement of my wrist, and I am not pushing to extremes. I'm exploring my range of comfort. So the reason I can say I don't care about what, at the moment I don't care about what is anatomically correct, I'm not going to dictate what the range of movement should be, because I know that I'm safe as long as I'm staying in my range of comfort. This can be really, really hard for somebody hypermobile. You have to be even more aware and more gentle and tentative. Definitely no speedy movements. You don't want to go flying into your boundary and whack up against it suddenly and realise you've gone too far. So slow, only range of comfort. But again, I'm just coming down to my elbow now, exploring range of my elbow in a very lazy way, soft and lazy. But again, anybody, for example, who's trained like as a gymnast as a child or something, anybody who, also in the world of circus, which is my background, anybody who has trained themselves to push way out of their range of comfort all the time, it can be really hard to know what that is. It's like, I don't know what my range of comfort is. This is okay. Like, I've trained myself to feel that this massive extreme, to think in an extreme, like a contortionist is going to have totally different range of comfort to me, for example. So I'm not saying that the contortionist shouldn't go there. I'm not saying that. If they want to do that, that's their own choice. It's their own body and their own life and their own choice. But to have a practice where within that range you just slow down and only do what's comfortable, they will have expanded their range of comfort so dramatically. But they're also always pushing into extremes. I'm talking about contortionists, by the way. They're pushing into extremes. I'm now playing with the shoulder. What's my range of comfort in the shoulder? Where do I go comfortably in my shoulder? So yeah, a contortionist might go into an incredible total extension, total back bend, and feel okay there. And they know for themselves when they're somewhere comfortable and when they start to push further. So just because it looks totally different from what somebody else might do, they still have an awareness of their own comfort and awareness of their own boundaries. So I'm talking about what you can do easily versus what you can do with strain. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. What can I do easily without any strain? And I notice that strain comes in, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's strain. I don't need that. I'm going to go into the movement in my upper right side of my torso. So from my shoulder down to my breastbone, the right side of my ribs, I can roll into any position I want. So there's opening, there's closing. And of course, I cannot separate any part of myself from the rest of myself. So I say that I'm playing with movement in the upper right corner of my torso. So this is from my right shoulder down the breastbone to the waistline, the right side of my ribs. I'm playing with, that's the same with the back. But of course, as I play with that, my whole spine is moving, my whole rib cage is moving. Sorry, burping. Burping on YouTube, excuse me. So the spine is a chain, the ribs are connected to the spine. I'm trying to focus my attention on the right side of my rib cage, the right upper quarter of my torso, but in my expansive peripheral awareness, I know and I can feel that the whole of the rest of me is moving. I'm going to come down, I'm going to go along to the left side of the torso and see how I feel after doing just that side, because I can feel already that I feel very different in my left and right sides. But instead I'm just continuing because I want to keep kind of flowing through. So I can use my peripheral awareness to just register that I do feel different in my left and right sides. And then I do whatever I can and whatever I want to explore the movement in the upper left quarter of my torso, which is to say the left side of my rib cage. And when I say rib cage, I mean the three-dimensional rib cage. So the back of the body, the sides and the front, the whole upper left quarter, three-dimensional chunk of my torso. And I can just go anywhere I want to explore that. And there's of course so much movement in the ribs, opening, closing the back of the ribs, all the sides of the ribs, all the front of the ribs. Yeah, nice. Now I am going to lie down and see how I feel. I felt really clear that I did my whole right arm, I did my right upper corner of my torso, I did my left corner of my torso, and I didn't do my left arm yet. So, we'll come back to it. Left shoulder, exploring. And it will be apparent, maybe to you in your own experience. Gosh, I don't know who I'm talking to, but anyway, it might be apparent in one's own experience that exploring the movements of the shoulder is very similar to exploring the movements of the rib cage. Lots of what I'm doing now is similar to what I was doing before, but my attention is on my shoulder, so can I just think about my shoulder? I'm going to roll onto my side, feel what my shoulder can do. The shoulder is the collarbone, the shoulder blade against the ribs, as well as the ball and socket joint of the shoulder, where the arm begins. And then I'm going to come to my elbow. The elbow is pretty simple in its opening and closing, but it can also open and close in different directions depending on how it relates to the shoulder and the wrist. I just play with the elbow opening and closing in different ways. And I also play with the rotation of the lower arm, because that's also a movement in the elbow. I like to use my own hand to do that, a very soft passive rolling. That's nice. That's a nice, really being so light with my own touch. That's a nice thing for anybody who's got, I'm going to do the other side that I didn't do, because it's really nice to relieve computer strain. I can feel it on my right side where I have computer strain and phone strain worse. I can feel it releasing stuff in my shoulder and my eye and my jaw on my right hand side. Then I come back, I just need to rest. My left arm got a bit tired. With my left arm on the ground, I just very lazily explore movement of my wrist, soft movement of my fingers. And I want to slow it down a bit and make it smaller, so my range of comfort changed as I got tired in that hand. So my range of comfort is smaller for a moment while I try and release tension in my arm. Just a little, like somebody reaching out with their last breath. It's like the last little bit of movement in my hand. And I feel like I've restored comfort in my hand, and I can now go a little bit further. It's enjoyable for me now to open up the palm. And then my breathing can soften again, and I can go a bit more through the movement of the fingers again now, a little bit more articulate. And I just want to roll on my back again a little bit, and I'm starting to now play with the movement of my hip, and I want to do both legs at the same time. That's my decision right now. Slightly influenced by time. Very much influenced by time, actually. So just exploring the movement of my hips, taking my knees around where my feet go, where my knees go, where my heels go. All of that affects the movement of my hips. So I'm just doing anything I want with my whole body, but to explore comfortable range of movement in my hips. I can use, again, touch, contact with my own body. I just want to do this in any way that's pleasurable. A sort of curiosity of a baby is good, because then you can just grab a foot and see where it goes. And there's no pressure for it to go anywhere in particular, but it's like, ooh, that feels nice. Ooh, I'll do that for a bit. Piriformis. Rolling and softening and just playing with the range of movement in my hips, whether I have a little bit more muscular usage. So if I want to get my legs straight, for example, that means I'm using muscles in my legs. But then I can play with softening again and straightening again. Yeah, softening. If I find something on one side, is there an equivalent on the other side? But I'm not trying to repeat an exercise because then I won't find it. Each side is different, so how can I just play? And playing with my knees, movement in my knees. Where do my knees go? In and out. Different directions. If I hold on to my ankles, what can my knees do? And then what about my ankles and feet and toes? And I want to get my hands back and my arms and elbows. And I'm just wriggling and lying and feeling this connection from my fingertips to my center. Feeling the connection from one part of my body to another. Feeling the support of the floor underneath me. If I move my head, my pelvis goes down. If I move my pelvis, my head goes down. Whee. Using different speeds. So I'm not doing my range of contact, my range of movement play anymore. I'm just exploring, where can things go? Where can things go? A last exploration of moving my body in space. Where can my head go? Where can my toes go? Where can my heel go? Where can my elbow go? Where can my ribs go? The back of the ribs. Where can my low belly go? Where can my head go? Wee, I like being on my head. Where can my face go? Where can my armpits go? Oh, I haven't thought about my armpits for such a long time. Hi, armpits. Oh, this is fun. Where can my pubic bone go? And then all of this, can I be soft? Just using strength from the ground down to go up. My support comes from the floor. My support comes from the floor, so I can stay as soft as possible. Wee. 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 And I'm going to finish with my feet on the floor, bouncing. Where can my arms and legs go? Where can my head go? Reaching in space, moving everything around. Where can my back of my body go? And where can my belly go? And taking a walk to finish. Lots going on in that practice. Lots of different things. So I'm off next week. I'll probably do some of my own practice, but I won't live stream it, and I won't talk at the same time. Worried that I'm going to be going crazy because